Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla Apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
I'm Roger Stone, and I'm here with Paul Stone, who is the founder and CEO of Colonial Metals Group. Paul, I've been in American politics for 45 years. I've seen booms and busts, but I've never been more apprehensive about the economy than today. I've been following your Substack, and what I like about it is you recognize that past is prologue. If you want to know what's going to happen in the future, then look what has happened economically in the past. Mm-hmm. I was particularly interested in your analysis of the subprime mortgage fiasco, which we seem to be on the cusp of actually trying yet again. At least one of the presidential candidates wants to recycle this disastrous program. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's just when let's say we fertilize the garden, right? The weeds get fertilized too. Weeds typically grow faster than the crop you're trying to benefit. So when the government's allowed to print money or create programs like fractional lending, if a financial institution is strapped to making solid loans because that's their own money, and they have to be judicious about how they release those funds, it's because the lending institution might suffer something terrible if the loans aren't repaid. So when Clinton is thinking it would be nice if people without perfect credit to own a home, it's a wonderful idea. Of course, it's an impactful effect if more homeowners own the ground they're sleeping on for the neighborhood, the block they live on. If we could just help more people own those homes, how do we do that? And I suppose the idea was, well, let's let lending institutions lend out 10 times the amount of money they actually have. But that's printing money. That's money from out of thin air. That's a creek turning into a flood. And eventually when the resource you're drawing on, the dollar itself, ends up at zero. I mean, currently today it's toilet paper with a face on it. But when it's at zero, then all of that financial wind, that artificial wind that's been blowing into asset values goes away. And then maybe no one owns a home. Then our expectations are ruined. So when we look at these busts, people call them bubbles, they can only form when there's excess or a falsehood source of capital pouring into a trapped asset.
It's interesting. As you know, I've written 2 books on Richard Nixon, and I recognize some of his great accomplishments, ending the war in Vietnam, strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets, but closing the gold window, taking us off the gold standard, that seems to me to be the beginning of our money being backed by nothing,
Absolutely.
Being backed by air.
Right. And now, if no new money had been introduced artificially, we wouldn't have the problems we have today, and the government payroll for the year wouldn't be $1.4 trillion because there wouldn't be that money in existence to have the government grow to this ridiculous size. Leaving the gold standard, though, we don't necessarily have to blame it on Nixon, although he was the one who allowed something to go forward. Europe, the European countries had realized that we weren't as fundamentally sound as we said we were, or messaged out to the world that we were, and they were starting to make noise about wanting their gold back. They had shifted their gold to the United States so we could consider it ours and backing our dollar, which allowed us to expand the money supply without ruining the dollar. If they want their gold back, our house of cards falls apart. So he meets in Camp David with a few of his advisors for a few days, and then he decides this is where you can put that responsibility on his shoulders. He does decide, and in a disgusting fashion, in my opinion, breaking into an episode of Bonanza. So we're distracted. Interrupts Bonanza, the greatest TV show at the time on air, I think on a Friday, August 15th, 1971, and lets us know that gold has nothing to do with our money anymore. And by that time, I don't even know if people were really aware that gold still had anything to do with our money, right? But that limit on the government from growing past the size we wanted it to be was destroyed, and now the government has interfered in our lives by printing of money because they're causing the cost of everything to rise so ridiculously high, and wages aren't going up with that. So we're drowning, and the American family is destroyed, and moms are forced into the workforce, and latchkey kids is created, and now we got all this misery and chaos and envy and jealousy all over the place. When we've lost sight of how magical a human being is. It's a magical creation. And we're so distracted thinking we're just components in some gerbil wheel that makes the machine go and pleases the government.
Interestingly enough, Arthur Burns, who was Nixon's chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, adamantly opposed to leaving the gold standard. It was John Connally, former governor of Texas, famously wounded with John F. Kennedy, then Treasury Secretary, who persuaded Nixon not only to abandon the gold standard, but also to impose wage and price controls. Something else we're talking about again. How did that work out last time?
When does any government rent control or artificial limit set on something ever work out? Like rent control, yeah, you might be there 20 years. It's $250 a month for rent. In a corresponding apartment, might be $3,500 a month for rent, and you get to live in your place for that cheap rent. But the building is dying around you because the landlord can't continue to make enough money off the renters to fix the building up and keep it nice. Whatever the government idea is, so here's the thing. The government should not be orchestrating anything. They should be facilitating what we want or need them to do. And that's it. If they're the ones curating an experience, we've lived long enough to understand it's just garbage. It's painful and it's garbage and it's destructive.
It's also interesting to me that the official statistics that the government puts out, in almost all instances, when you look very carefully, they're cooked.
They're massage numbers. And then they go back and revise them, but they get the soundbite of how awesome the number is when everyone's going, on Friday, the Fed is going to put out some number. Okay, we're all listening. What's the number? They tell us the number. That gets stored in our memory. A month later, they revise them. We're like, someone made a mistake, or we barely even hear it. We hear the first sound, right? You make an impression, a lasting impression in 15 seconds, and then it's hard to dispel us hearing or unring that bell to correct it later. It's all hooey.
Yeah, they tell us we've created 818,000 new jobs. Then they revise it down to 600,000 new jobs. But when you look even closer, most of those are part-time jobs, and the actual hours worked per American has dropped dramatically.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, wages have remained flat.
Right.
Wage growth has been almost non-existent.
Right. And when people can understand just how disgusting that is, the government is pumping air into the cost of living prices. So the cost for you to be here keeps rising, but your wages don't. So are you getting an 8% raise a year in your job? Probably not. But that's, based off the last few decades, what the cost of living has been going up by. So I call that drowning. Most of this flood has drowned people out. Many, many people are benefiting from it, but most are not. I would say 60, 70% of the people in this country are struggling mightily because of the government's ideas. Reagan said it best. Their solutions are worse than their problems. So imagine that for 50 years off the gold standard where they can print, we got a problem. Here's another 100 billion. Here's another 50 billion. Here's another trillion. And they just reach behind them into some drawer that never runs out of money. And mathematically, they could print money until it's worth 1/100th of a penny. And it might cost $50 for a coffee. Mathematically, they can do that forever. I could eat half a Snickers bar today, half tomorrow, half the next day, and never run out of Snickers bar until I'm splitting atoms. But it didn't satisfy my hunger after a while.
What really disturbs me is that we now seem to be hell-bent on going towards a digital monetary system. So, like, the government would give you a plastic card. They would control your money. When you went to buy groceries or, say, gasoline, they'd have to approve that sale. So, theoretically, if they didn't like the church you were donating to, or the party you belong to, or the charitable contributions, they could
Yes.
They could deny your sales.
Yes, absolutely.
You wouldn't control your own money.
Nope. Yep. You would bypass Congress. So executive order, you could put a moratorium. If you're using our money, you can't purchase ammo or weapons for 6 months until, we take a look at some things. Well, you put ammo and gun makers out of business. By the time it gets to the Supreme Court, what's there to fight over? Because you are now swiping using government-issued property and government-issued currency at that terminal. And as that transaction runs to get approved electronically, there could already be a setting in place where it declines that. Or it could be monitoring how often you buy red meat. We all know that red meat eaters are helping destroy the climate. So they can curtail the demand for red meat. They can curtail the production of it. They can manage and monitor carbon output by how often they let you consume things that are negative, in their opinion, on creating carbon output. It's literally the last thing that's left to manage all of us idiots out here in the real world that are producing the revenue and creating the jobs ourselves that they want to benefit from.
Paul Stone, founder and chief executive officer of the Colonial Metals Group. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Absolutely. Thank you, Roger. It's a blessing.
God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Folks, check that out. Go to colonialmetals.com/stone for a free consultation on how you can diversify your portfolio and to begin to protect your retirement by using precious metals. I think you'll be glad you did. A lot of people have seen this story about an academic, Dr. Alan Lichtman, who claims that he has been correct on 9 out of the 10 national presidential elections, who now says that based on his model that Kamala Harris will win. And the media are kind of grabbing this and running with it. So I had to take a look at it to find out whether he's wrong. And the answer is no. As a matter of fact, the only one he's gotten right were the ones that a blind pig could have figured out. But in the close elections, he's actually gotten them wrong. So, for example, he said that Al Gore would win. He predicted that Gore would win. And then afterwards, he blamed the process by which George Bush won as the reason why his prediction was wrong. He also said that that Donald Trump would not win in 2016, and once again he was wrong. I'm Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show, and I'll be right back.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV Insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
And we're back. This is Roger Stone. We were talking about Dr. Alan Lichtman, who has claimed that he has accurately predicted, I guess it was 9 out of the last 10 presidential elections based on his model. But when you dig into this, he's based his model solely on the popular vote. Now, we all know that American presidents are not elected on the popular vote, which is why, in the end, he predicted that Trump would lose the popular vote. Then he only changed his prediction after Trump won the Electoral College vote. Very clever. But the analysis in his book really doesn't hold up to these numbers. If you're concerned about his prediction, I would not be concerned. But it's interesting the way the mainstream media grabbed this prediction and ran with it. The other thing I saw this week with the new movie Reagan is out with Dennis Quaid. I confess to you I haven't seen it yet, but I hear great things about it. I, of course, worked for Ronald Reagan in 1976, 1980, and 1984. Spent a great deal of time with him. Now, Chris Wallace, formerly of Fox, formerly of CNN, said in an interview that, he didn't think Reagan would have liked Donald Trump.
A lot of people say that there would be no room for Ronald Reagan in Donald Trump's Republican Party. Reagan confronted the Russians. He talked, and you in the movie talk about an evil empire. Trump doesn't do that. Reagan supported free trade. Trump imposes tariffs. And Reagan's 11th commandment was, thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. I got to say, I think Reagan would have been appalled by Trump's behavior.
Here's the problem, Chris. Since the only two times Ronald Reagan and Chris Wallace were together, I was there since I introduced them in the 1979-1980 period. Ronald Reagan loved Donald Trump because he represented entrepreneurship, free enterprise, and he would always put America first. So with all due respect, I think you proved it when you moderated a debate. Somewhere along the line, things went askance. Your father, Mike Wallace, was a great and fair journalist. He was a great friend of the Reagans, but he covered them fairly. You, my friend, have become a partisan. It's quite sad. I also interesting to say that I think this new coalition of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Donald Trump has with it the potential for the forging of a new American majority. Let's listen to RFK.
You talked when you went up on stage a little while back about making America healthy again, and he's deputizing you. And you're going to make America healthy again. So when you get in there, if Donald Trump is fortunate enough to be reelected, how are you going to strangle the food industry so that it can't poison the children? And how are you going to strangle the pharmaceutical industry so it can't poison the people? I mean, that is not going to be easy. What's your plan?
No, it's not going to be easy. But, you know, the regulatory agencies were set up to do exactly that. And now they're doing exactly the opposite. And, I've litigated on these issues, Jesse, against NIH, against CDC, against FDA. When you litigate against these agencies, you get a PhD in corporate capture and how to unravel it. And I understand exactly what we need to do. We need to take the $42 billion budget of NIH, which is now being used to incubate new pharmaceutical products to treat chronic disease. And instead, we need to figure out what's causing it. We need to name names. We need to say, whether it's high fructose corn syrup is linked to the obesity epidemic, establish the science behind that. And once we have a good science out there, the litigators come in and we'll solve the problem.
This, to me, has great, great, great promise. Back in April of last year, I wrote a column in which I advocated, rather wistfully, a Trump-Kennedy ticket. This is a recognition at the time that the Democrat Party structure was going to kneecap RFK the way they did Bernie Sanders. They were never going to give him an honest, fair shot at that nomination. They essentially canceled the Iowa caucuses. They penalized New Hampshire's Democrat Party, saying that if they had the primary, which, by the way, is required by state law, they would be stripped of their delegates. They told RFK that if he didn't hit a certain threshold, he would not be allowed on the ballot in future primaries. And then, sadly, I was disappointed to see him run as an independent, having bolted the Republican Party myself in 2012 when they nominated Mitt Romney, a man I recognized believed in nothing whatsoever other than the enrichment of Mitt Romney and his friends, I had supported the Libertarian Party candidate for president, Governor Gary Johnson, helped him get on the ballot, and it was extraordinary in two senses. One, the laws that are written that regulate how you get on the ballot are written by Republicans and Democrats working together to make sure they don't have any competition. But even worse, the mainstream media subjects you to a complete blackout. So the fact that RFK was saying some of the most interesting, some of the most constructive, some of the most provocative things in this presidential campaign, he couldn't get covered anyplace. They tried to pretend he didn't exist. And then the Democrat Party once again swept in with their tsunami of lawfare to keep him off the ballot. Sounds to me like Donald Trump agrees with me.
You know, Bobby, RFK Jr., that was a meaningful endorsement. That was a great endorsement. We'll take on the corruption at the FDA, the CDC, World Health Organization, and other institutions of public health that have dominated and really are dominated by corporate power and dominated really by China.
There it is, folks. It's time to make America healthy again. Thanks for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.